Good evening, beautiful people, and happy Monday. So have you heard? California is considering hitting social media creators with thousands of dollars in fines over undisclosed political payments. You also have Don Lemon asking a federal judge to throw out the criminal case against him over the anti-ICE church protest in Minnesota. And he says that President Trump is part of the reason that he was prosecuted in the first place. And the WNBA is in chaos. They are now being forced to confront a question that the league has largely managed to avoid until now. And that $1 million question is, who exactly qualifies to play in a women's professional basketball league? I am sure that we all here know the answer, but a good portion of Americans do not. So let's get into it. Welcome to Nellie Miranda. Let's start in California because this story immediately caught my attention. California lawmakers are considering giving the state's Fair Political Practices Commission more power to punish content creators who receive money from political campaigns and then fail to disclose it. And we are not talking about a slap on the wrist. We're talking about fines of up to $5,000 per violation. Now, it is important to note that California already has a law requiring disclosure when a political committee pays someone to post content supporting or opposing a candidate or ballot measure. The disclosure has to tell viewers that the creator was paid by the committee in connection with the post. Assemblymember Mark Berman, a Democrat, is behind legislation that would make it easier for California's Fair Political Practices Commission to directly penalize violations rather than going through a slower court process. And those who support this legislation says that there's a very simple reason for doing this. Political campaigns have discovered influencers. Think about how dramatically political communication has changed. 20 years ago, campaigns spent enormous amounts of money buying television commercials. Then came Facebook, then YouTube, Instagram, and now TikTok. And now campaigns understand that sometimes a creator sitting in their bedroom talking into an iPhone can influence an audience more effectively than a polished 30-second television commercial, especially when that creator has spent years building trust with its audience. So California's argument is basically if somebody is being paid to influence your political opinion, then you deserve to know who's paying them. One example cited in the reporting involves Los Angeles influencer Shaka Smith. Smith has more than 700,000 followers and posted about supporting California gubernatorial candidate Tom Steyer. But Smith disclosed that he had been paid by Steyer's campaign, and he says that he believes others should disclose as well.
This is an ad, and honestly, I wish more political content said that first. I'm not here to read talking points. My principles are not for sale. I'm here because I'm tired of pretending California cannot afford to take care of its own. That's why I'm supporting Tom Steyer for governor. He's running to deliver single-payer health care.
Other content creators have allegedly accepted political payments without making those relationships clear. And that is where this gets interesting because I actually think two things can be true here. Transparency is absolutely important. If a campaign pays somebody thousands of dollars to praise a candidate, the audience should know that, regardless if it's a Democrat campaign or a Republican campaign. Just let people know. If I'm sitting here telling you that candidate X is amazing while candidate X quietly deposited $5,000 into my bank account, I think you deserve to know that. You also deserve to know that if you are 65 and up and are on Medicare, you are not alone. Everything costs way more money than it did a year ago, and you feel it every time you check out. Here's one place you might be overpaying and not even know it, your Medicare. So if you are on it or about to be, Chapter can help. They are the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. Folks who switched with Chapter last year save an average of $1,100. That is real money, especially in this economy. Money that can go towards your gas, your groceries, and other household items. By reaching out to Chapter, you will walk away knowing that you are in the best plan that actually fits your needs with access to care that you can count on. You do not have to be on this journey alone. So for complete Medicare guidance, please call Chapter at 646-817-8160. That is 646-817-8160, or go to askchapter.org/Nellie. Now back to the story. There is another side to this disclosure piece. When the government starts imposing potentially thousands of dollars in penalties on individual political creators. The details matter. A $5,000 fine means something very different to somebody with 10 million followers than it does to a creator that has 20,000 followers. One California creator interviewed in the reporting raised exactly that concern, saying that smaller creators could have difficulty dealing with penalties and legal expenses. In this article, it reads, Dustin Torreverde, a content creator in Southern California who hasn't been paid by a political campaign for social media posts, said it's important for influencers to be transparent with their audiences. But the bill could pose an unfair burden on creators who are just trying to make a living. A lot of us are very small creators. So if we were to get penalized and we have to get lawyers, stuff like that, it is going to be very difficult for us. So yes, I agree, two things can be true at once. So enforcement needs to distinguish between somebody deliberately hiding campaign money and somebody making a technical mistake with a disclosure. Because what we don't want is transparency rules turning into a mechanism that intimidates independent political speech. But here's the most important question. Why stop with influencers? If transparency is the principle, let's make transparency the principle. Political consultants, campaign organizations, media personalities, organizations funding political advertising, both domestic and foreign, anybody paying somebody to persuade voters, it should be disclosed. Make the money trails clear. Because if we're going to be transparent, let's be transparent on all fronts. But speaking of journalism, social media, and politics becoming completely intertwined, Don Lemon wants his case thrown out. Remember the chaos inside City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota? Yes, back in January, anti-ICE demonstrators entered a church during a Sunday worship service. The demonstration targeted the church because one of its pastors was connected to ICE. The service was disrupted. Protesters chanted inside the church while they were having service, and Don Lemon was there covering what was happening.
Very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus.
Yes.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why we're here. Okay. That's what we're about.
Don't you think Jesus would be understanding
we're about
and love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a Christian?
No one is willing to talk.
This isn't just about me. This is about all journalists, especially here in the United States. I will not be intimidated. I will not back down. I will fight these baseless charges, and I will not be silenced.
So, yes, his attorneys are also arguing that prosecuting journalists for covering demonstrations could have a chilling effect on First Amendment reporting. So, in other words, they are saying that if journalists can be criminally prosecuted because they follow protesters into a controversial event, reporters may become afraid to document demonstrations at all. So really the central question in Don Lemon's case is, was he simply documenting what happened, or did he cross that line from journalist to participant? And prosecutors obviously believe that he crossed that line, because did he really need to be in that pastor's face, asking questions and making himself central to the protest? The federal case involves allegations that demonstrators interfered with the congregation's right to religious worship, but Don Lemon has maintained that he was there as a journalist, and his lawyers says his actions were protected by the First Amendment. So I'm just going to wait to see how this case unfolds, because if prosecutors can prove that Lemon actively participated in interfering with the church service, that's one situation. But if the evidence shows instead that he was simply documenting what protesters were doing, that's a very different situation. Either way, I think this case could become an important test of where journalism ends and participation begins. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. So moving on to our last story, let's talk about the WNBA, because this situation is getting more interesting by the day. WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert has now addressed the growing debate surrounding transgender participation in women's basketball, and the league appears to understand that this isn't going away. Engelbert sent a memo to teams Friday acknowledging that the subject is likely to receive significant attention and saying that the league intends to approach the issue thoughtfully. A group of team presidents and general managers is also expected to discuss the issue. But why now? Well, it is all because Indiana Fever player Sophie Cunningham made a common sense statement that biological males should not play in the women's NBA. And I guess some people didn't take it well. Minnesota Lynx coach Cheryl Reeves has also defended transgender athletes, describing the issue as one of human rights and arguing that children deserve access to sports, which is the wildest statement of all because no one is denying children access to sports. But just because someone's son likes to play dress up does not mean that he should be taking away sporting opportunities for biological girls. But the best part of all this mess is that former NBA player Enes Kanter Freedom declared for the 2027 WNBA draft as part of his challenge to transgender. Former NBA player Royce White followed with his own declaration.
To the official, I just declared for the 2027 WNBA draft in April. Join me in this journey.
Enes Kanter Freedom decided he's going to throw his hat into the WNBA.
The WNBA does not ban men who identify as women right now from playing in the league.
He would dominate the WNBA without batting an eyelash.
The number one prospect in the history of the WNBA.
Right now, I'm just having a blast in my feminine era. I never thought that I was a woman. You know, I've always trusted the science, and I thought I was a man my entire life. But you know, after further review, strong look at my personal preferences, it would appear that I am indeed sometimes identifying as a transgender woman. And I think it's only fair I get a chance to play with some of my queens here in the twilight of my career, my athletic prime.
Obviously, these announcements are intended to make a political point and test the logic of the league's rules. But they expose the question that the WNBA now has to answer. What does woman mean for eligibility purposes? The league cannot simultaneously operate a protected women's competition and then refuse to clearly explain the eligibility standard for entering that competition. I do have some questions for you guys, but before we get to that, I'm going to play you a clip of liberal lesbians making the LGBTQ letters an actual word.
These liberal lesbians actually are on our way to drop that daughter off at Sleepaway Camp, at Camp Highlight, which is a camp for children of LGBTQ parents or children who identify as LGBTQ, It's an amazing, amazing camp.
LGBTQ. I cannot. It sounds French. But anyways, what are your thoughts? Should political influencers be fined if they're secretly being paid by campaigns and don't disclose it? Was Don Lemon simply doing his job, or did he cross the line? And what are your thoughts on former NBA players joining the WNBA league? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you got any value from today's video, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe to support the channel and ring the bell so you don't miss any future updates. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.